All right, if you're in the San Francisco commercial real estate game, you know the drill. Pinning down costs can be a real headache. So today, we're going to cut right through all that noise. We've got data from a local firm, and we're here to answer one big question for you.
So let's just get right to it. How much does a commercial appraisal actually cost in the city? I mean, whether you're looking to refinance, sell, or maybe even appeal your property taxes, this is the number you need to know to even get the ball rolling.
Okay, the short answer, you're looking at a starting range of about 2,000 to 6,000 bucks, and sometimes even more. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's a huge range, right? So let's dig into what actually determines where your property lands on that spectrum. And here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll talk about the bottom line cost. Then, we'll drill down into the different property types. After that, we'll get into what really drives your fee. Then, we'll put it all into the San Francisco context and finish up with how you can get your exact quote. Okay, first things first, let's really understand that core price range and where these numbers are even coming from. And just so we're all on the same page, we are not talking about your standard single-family home. A commercial appraisal is a totally different beast. It's an expert valuation for any property that's designed to make money. Think apartment buildings, offices, storefronts, or warehouses. All right, now for the good stuff. The cost of an appraisal can change a lot depending on what kind of building you have. So let's break down the numbers for each one. First up, let's talk multifamily properties. If you own an apartment building, the big thing that determines the price isn't the square footage. It's all about how many units you've got. And you can see how it scales up, right? For smaller buildings, say 5 to 15 units, you're starting at $2,000. Jump up to 16 to 50 units, and that starting fee goes to $2,500. 50 to 100 units, now we're at $3,000. And for those big complexes with over 100 units, you're looking at a starting point of at least $4,000. Okay, let's switch gears. If you've got an office building, an industrial warehouse, or a retail space, the logic completely changes. For these, it's all about the size, the total square footage. You see a pretty similar pattern here too. A smaller building, under 10,000 square feet, starts at that same $2,000 mark. But as you get bigger, that fee just keeps climbing, all the way up to a $5,000 starting point for those massive properties over 100,000 square feet. And last but not least, we've got what's usually the trickiest property type to appraise, mixed use. You know, those buildings with maybe some retail on the bottom and apartments or offices up top. That extra complexity definitely shows up in the price. See, the starting line is immediately higher. It begins at $2,500 for even a pretty small property. And from there, it just keeps climbing through those size tiers, hitting a $6,000 starting point for the biggest and most complicated buildings. So here's the million-dollar question, or I guess the $2,000 to $6,000 question. All these prices are just starting fees. What is it that pushes a project from the low end to the high end? Well, let's get into the 3 key things that really determine your final cost. It pretty much boils down to these 3 things. First, how complex is the property itself? The more tenants you have, or if it's mixed use, the more work it is and the higher the fee. Second, why do you need the appraisal? A simple valuation for a loan is way less involved than one you need for a lawsuit or a tax appeal. And finally, the report itself. A simple check-the-box form is going to be cheaper than a full-blown narrative report with tons of market analysis. Here's a really easy way to picture it. On one side, you've got a simple appraisal. Just a standard building, you just need its current value, and a basic form report is fine. That's going to keep you on the lower end of that price range. But on the other side, you've got a complex one. A big mixed-use property, you need it for a tax appeal, and you require a super detailed narrative report. Well, that's heading straight for the top end of the cost spectrum. Okay, so let's zoom in and focus specifically on San Francisco. Because let's be real, our market has its own quirks that can definitely push these costs up. And this quote from the source material just nails it. San Francisco is packed with dense, high-value buildings. A lot of them are historic or just plain complicated. So what might be considered a standard project in another city could easily be seen as complex here. So what does that actually mean for your wallet? Well, if your property is on the simpler side for San Francisco, you're probably looking at a starting point in that $2,000 to $3,000 range. But if you've got a bigger, more intricate property, you should probably be budgeting more like $4,000, $5,000, or even $6,000 just to get started. And that brings us to the final and honestly, the most important part. We've talked about ranges, we've talked about factors, but how do you lock in your actual final number? Look, if you take one thing away from this, let it be this. Every single price we've talked about today is a starting point.
Your building is unique, your situation is unique, and that means a custom quote is the only way you'll know the real final fee.
The good news is, getting that quote is a really simple 3-step process. First, just get your info together: the address, property type, size, and why you need the appraisal. Second, just reach out to the firm. Give them a call or use their online form. And third, they'll look at your specifics and give you a confirmed final fee for your project. It's really that easy.
So there you have it. We've gone through the costs, the property types, and all the key factors that can push that price up or down. So now the question for you is, where do you think your property falls? Is it on the standard side or is it a bit more complex? You've got the tools now, so what do you think your number will be?